All right, hello everyone. Thank you again for joining us today on the second day of the CubeSat Developers Workshop. We're very excited to have all of you again today. We had a great day yesterday, very busy day yesterday, and a very busy day for you again today. So definitely excited for everybody that could join us right now. Currently, we have over 1,700 registered participants from over 80 countries. So definitely a lot of great engagement in this virtual format. So today we'd like to get started with this great keynote and a Q&A panel. So I will introduce Dr. Kira Abercrombie, who is a professor here at Cal Poly in the Aerospace Engineering Department. And her research interests include orbital debris, material identification, space environmental effects on orbiting objects, and orbit determination. So with that, Dr. Abercrombie, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Ryan. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Wednesday of the conference week. I get the privilege of introducing our keynote speaker this morning. Colonel Matthew Cantore is a Commander Delta II, headquartered at Peterson Air Force Base in Colorado. He commands the newly activated Space Domain Awareness Delta, spanning the globe with personnel at 10 locations, supporting missions in 4 countries. Delta II is responsible for preparing and presenting assigned and attached forces for the purpose of executing combat-ready space domain awareness operations to deter aggressions and, if necessary, fight to protect and defend the United States and our allies from attack in, through, and from space. So with that, I think we're going to roll the video presented.
Good morning, good afternoon. I'm Colonel Matt Cantore. I'm the commander of Space Delta II in the United States Space Force. And it is an honor to be with you virtually here at the SmallSat Forum hosted by Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. Thank you, Cal Poly, and thank you members of this community for giving us this invite so we could come join you. We've had a cooperative research and development partnership with Cal Poly and the SmallSat community for a couple of years now. And we look forward to continuing to partner in the future as we continue to embark on an ever-growing and ever-changing, very dynamic space environment, one that we are all part of as we operate together. I also want to pass on a regards from Lieutenant General Stephen Whiting and Major General Deanna Burt, the commander of the Space Operations Command and the Combined Force Space Component Command, respectively. They wish they could be here today, but again, they thank you for this partnership and this opportunity to collaborate. So you may have noticed that you have a Space Force officer standing before you. Maybe you've never seen one of those. And I know it looks an awful lot like the Air Force, and we're all getting used to the changes. But I tell you, the Space Force is new, it is real, and it is here. Born on the 20th of December, 2019, the Space Force came into existence. And in that time, we have been moving very rapidly to get after the mission sets given to the Space Force going forward. Before that, the Department of Defense of the United States had space in a variety of manners. The Air Force had a large portion, but there was also space components within the Army and the Navy. As we move forward, we're looking to move and bring all that together. But even more so, we are looking to be bold and be innovative. In fact, I like to think of us as the startup of the military here in the United States. We certainly are looking at how we can push the envelope of how we can push technology and execute missions in the space domain to be able to benefit not just the U.S. Department of Defense, but humanity as a whole. Our organization is really taking shape. Just like all the other service headquarters, we have ours based out of the Pentagon there in Washington, D.C. Our 3 field commands are also up and running and getting established. The first one is the Space Systems Command out of Los Angeles, which is focused on acquiring all the technology needed to be able to execute those mission sets. The second one is the Space Operations Command based out of Colorado Springs, Colorado, SPOC as we call it, which is where all of our space deltas sit to execute a variety of missions. I have the benefit of leading an organization under one of those known as Space Delta II, where we focus on space domain awareness. More on that here in a minute. And then finally, we have our last field command, Space Training and Readiness Command, which is just about to stand up sometime in late 2021. STARCOM is where we're going to be able to do our talent management for all of our space personnel. We're also going to be able to do test, training, education, and doctrine development under STARCOM. So as those 3 field commands really take shape and take off, we then are moving forward. So if you think of Space Force as a new startup, we certainly are really moving forward. And not only are we taking those traditional organizational elements and those missions that we've pulled together, we have a bold, innovative new outlook that we are looking to enact. Everything was clean sheet. And so as we go forward, we're trying to find the best ways of organizing this 21st century military organization going forward. And tell you, it has been an exciting year and a half, and we have a lot more in store as we move forward. Now, you may have noticed that the Space Force and Space Delta II does not operate small sats. And so we're at a small sat form, and that's okay. Although we do operate the Department of Defense's space-based environmental monitoring satellites, we have the task to keep track of all the objects on orbit all the time. Space domain awareness, as we call it. And that's where our interests collide, pun intended. Not only do we do the tracking of all the objects on orbit, we also need to make sure that we share that information so that we avoid collisions. And if 2 objects are going to collide, that we get the word out so that we can potentially maneuver one of them and be able to keep the domain free of debris. It is an exciting and a powerful role that we have, but one that we look forward to doing it together with you, with this small sat community. 2020 may be the year of COVID, but in my mind, that's not what I think of. 2020 was the dawn of the age of mega constellations, and we have increased the number of objects on orbit in a tremendous way. If you think back just a few years ago, we came to this forum and said there were about 18,000 objects on orbit that we tracked. Today, just 3 years later, 26,000 plus objects on orbit. And even more so than that is the number of objects per launch. A couple of years ago, we were seeing less than 4 objects per launch. At 2021, through a few months, we're seeing over 20 payloads per launch. And it's just an astronomical increase in the number of objects going into the domain. And our job, again, gets harder and harder as we are trying to keep track of all those objects on orbit. We want to partner with you. We are excited about pushing technology to the edge, using innovative ways for us to be able to execute the small sat missions and all the other missions that are done in the space domain. But we need to be able to work together, we think, to be able to protect this commons. And certainly, as more and more congestion increases in certain altitude orbits, we need to be even closer and closer in our alignment and our sharing of information. In this forum, the 18th Space Control Squadron, one of the units under Space Delta II, is going to give a presentation. And I'd ask that if you have time, please listen to Ms. Miles' presentation. She will give you insights of exactly how the 18th functions, as well as how we can collaborate, what information they need, and what services they can use to provide you. I think it'll be a very beneficial use of your time as we work together going forward. The future is certainly bright for mega constellations. It is bright for all of us as small sat owner-operators, and for the space domain awareness, we look forward to continuing to partner with you all and with other elements of the commercial sector, with academia, and other elements of the U.S. government and our allies to be able to share information of what's going on in the domain. It has been an exciting couple of years, and it is only going to increase. So again, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to come speak with this forum today. Again, I realize that we are not assembled in one spot like we have in past years, but still it's very important that the small sat community comes together and talks. We in the Space Force embrace the technology that you are pushing forward. We certainly want to be with you as we push the bounds of what is capable going forward. And we know we need to partner with you so that we can operate safely in this ever-congested space domain. In Space Force, we say our motto is Semper Supra, which means always above. For this audience, that doesn't seem quite right, however. So how about we'll see you in the neighborhood. Thanks for having us. We'll see you in the future.
Okay, thank you, Colonel. We have the opportunity now to hear from 3 of the Colonel's colleagues. They will be here to answer some questions for you. So I will introduce Diana Moskosnik, and then she will be able to introduce the rest of her counterparts. Diana is a world-renowned expert in space situation awareness and safety and is currently focused on increasing space collaboration with international partners and facilitating data and information exchange globally. So with that, Diana, you would like to introduce the rest of your colleagues?
Sure, thanks so much. So as she said, my name is Diana McKissick. I'm the lead for data sharing and partnership at the 18th. I've been there about 11 years now. So most of you probably remember us or maybe even know us as the JSPOC rather than 18 Space, but we have been doing this mission for now over a decade. So I'd like to introduce two of my team members that if you have launched a satellite or have asked questions about launching a satellite, you've likely had the privilege of talking to these two women. First, Cynthia Wilson. She is basically our lead for early engagement and the CubeSat community. And Kyra works very closely with her. We just brought her on the team, but she actually has a lot of experience as our lead for launch collision avoidance, which is another one of the services that we provide at the 18th. So hopefully everybody was able to see Kyra's presentation yesterday. If not, we highly encourage you to take a look. It provides all of the details that you would need to understand how you can get in touch with the 18th, how we can provide data, how we can work together, and how we can really forge a relationship from what we like to say is cradle to grave. So everything from pre-launch discussions and preparations all the way through, final reentry, if that's the path for your satellite. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Kira, for any questions.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. We do have a question from the audience, and I just want to remind everybody that are the attendees, you can post your questions into the Q&A, and we'll facilitate those from here. So the question is, and for any of the three of you that want to respond to this, with mega constellations coming online and automated orbital maneuvers, what kind of issues do you believe that will cause for tracking, and how would a satellite developer communicate automated maneuvers with you?
So I'll start with the second question. We do have something in spacetrack.org, which is the website through which we not only share information with satellite operators, but we also receive information. So if you're not familiar, there's actually a help page on Spacetrack, and you can go down to, I believe the option is SSA sharing. And we have an entire handbook called the Spaceflight Safety Handbook for Operators. And within that, there's a section that provides information on how you can actually provide a formatted maneuver notification. We decided to use the CCSDS orbital parameter message because we understand that it's an international standard to provide those maneuver notifications. And you can upload those to spacetrack.org. You can even leverage our API to make it automated. And then you can actually elect to just share that with the 18th so that we have that information for our own orbital maintenance, or you can share that information with other owner operators, which is what we highly encourage. Everything we've built on spacetrack.org has been done so with the intent that satellite operators can share information with other satellite operators. And that's something we strive to do regardless of what kind of satellite you operate and what orbit you're in. So mega constellations, as Colonel Cantore explained, have definitely challenged us this past year. But we've also learned a lot from working with them. And we're very fortunate that those mega constellation companies are very close partners with us. So I would say, actually communicate on a fairly daily basis. And we've actually been able to improve our tracking capability by working with them and understanding how to better integrate and leverage their data. So I think this is going to grow exponentially really over the next few years. But it has been a steep learning curve, but it's also going to really help us when we may have to deal with these situations with a non-cooperative owner operator. So maybe somebody who doesn't want to share that information with us.
That's really, really interesting. And another question that's come through is, as you well know, in November, the interim directive on collision avoidance was released. And it does seem like it could become a potential procedural requirement for NASA missions, which would obviously affect those of us in education doing CubeSats with the launches. Do you have any suggestions as to what CubeSat users can do now in order to abide with that directive in the future?
That's a difficult one. Since we're down at the tactical level, we are a little bit removed from some of the legislation that's coming out, especially things that haven't been issued yet. Cynthia, do you have any input on maybe some general recommendations for CubeSats?
Well, the general thing is make sure they can be tracked, of course. That's the first thing we think about, which is basically a 1-unit CubeSat in LEO. There's also a NASA publication for best practices. It's not necessarily for CubeSat, but it has a lot of good information in it. Things to keep in mind when you're designing your mission as well. And talk to us. Get in touch with the 18th. That's a big one. The more that you talk with us, I think the safer everyone is.
Okay, great. And another question that's coming through from the audience: when can we expect US licensing rules to relax for small spacecraft form factors such as pocket cubes, which still struggle to get launch licenses despite being proven to be trackable even at the smallest 5-centimeter cube size?
So again, this is difficult for us to answer because we don't have a lot of involvement in the licensing rules. I will say that what we've seen at our level is that there's a difference between being able to track an object and being able to track an object to the standard necessary for spaceflight safety. So what we've seen is that with some very small spacecraft, we have been able to track them and identify them, but we don't have enough data to consistently track them to be able to provide data that's useful for conjunction assessment. So for some of those objects, we call them sparsely tracked objects, and they may only be tracked by one sensor and not consistently, which really makes it hard for owner operators to do collision avoidance. When the data on that really small object has, high covariances, not a lot of data, et cetera, et cetera. So, as tracking capabilities improve and hopefully commercial will be able to contribute a lot to that. I think that licensing requirements will be loosened, but again, that's just speculation on what I see in the industry today.
Okay, great.
That also brings up another recommendation. If you're not sure whether your satellite is big enough to be tracked, get one of those little tracking devices. There are things out there that can make it a lot more trackable. We don't recommend any one in particular, just something that's proven to work.
Yeah, that kind of leads into another question that they had. What is the smallest thing you can track? And then those kind of tracking devices that you can put on smaller CubeSats, they were asking for a bit more discussion on that as well.
Cynthia, would you like to take that one?
I know that there are several out there, and I know that they work. Again, I can't recommend any one in particular, but I can give you an instance of there are some quarter-U CubeSats out there that have bells and whistles and devices, and we're tracking them just fine. There are other quarter-U's out there that don't have any of those, and we have problems tracking them. So we know it does help. Which one you use is up to you, whatever fits your satellite. Just take a look and see what's out there, and there are plenty of companies that I'm sure would love to work with you.
Okay, great. And another question coming is, how does the CubeSat small sat community, does the CubeSat and small sat community have a good engagement with the 18th? And if we are a non-US developer, can they still use the services?
So I think here I'm going to give huge credit to Cal Poly for helping us improve our contacts with the small sat community. A lot of credit also goes to Cynthia and Kyra, who I think have really embraced the small sat community as an extension of their family almost. I've never seen two people more passionate about making contact with CubeSat operators. So compared to 5 years ago, I think our involvement with the CubeSat community has just grown so much. And a lot of that is through word of mouth. So to everybody that's listening now that's ever worked with us, we appreciate any of the information that you've passed on to other people that you work with that has encouraged them to get in contact with us. We do realize that as a military entity, there's logical hesitation to work closely with us. But I like to equate what we do very closely with GPS. It is a military capability, but we realize it's absolutely in our best interest to work with all satellite operators. And to that point, we will work with anybody around the world. So we do not have really any restrictions to what nations we work with. It's just a matter of you getting in contact with us and us being able to share that information, and then we can provide spaceflight safety support.
Okay, great. And speaking of being a military institute, I know there's some questions you might not be able to answer. So this one, feel free to say you don't know, but how do you track sub-U satellites like Swarm?
I think really what this comes down to is orientation. I don't want to say luck per se, but like I said earlier, we often track things, but it's just not consistently. So what we highly recommend is that if you want to be tracked consistently, be larger than 10 centimeters. So depending on the orientation of the radar, or the orientation of the satellite, et cetera, there's always chances that we're going to pick up something that's smaller. But the key right here, or for these, for spaceflight safety, is consistency. Cynthia, Kyra, if there's anything you want to add to that, please do.
Hi, this is Cynthia. Yeah, we work very closely with Swarm Technologies. They've been very helpful to us, and we've done well with their satellites. It's proprietary, so I can't talk about it, but they're the ones that have the extra little things on there to make it more trackable. So we haven't had the problems with them. So far, we've done well with their satellites, but again, they did a lot of thinking and planning ahead of time, thought of this, am I going to be able to be tracked, and planned for it ahead, which was really helpful. And also talking with us a lot.
Okay, and I guess kind of similar along those lines is it helpful or possible to engage the 18th in the design phase if we're looking to design smaller than a 1U CubeSat?
Cynthia, I'll let you take that one too, since this is a big part of your job.
I was looking at you. We're not allowed to give specifics on whether something is trackable or not. The general guidelines, it's just what we talked about, 1U size in LEO and a little bigger in GEO, and we can give you numbers on that. But we can't talk about exactly what we can and can't do. It gets a little sensitive.
So that makes sense.
Yeah, if they're not sure whether it can be tracked, they can't exactly come to us and say, please tell me whether this can. Fortunately, we can't do that. We would love to get them signed up on Space Track ahead of time. If they register on there, there are a lot of things they can see and read, the handbooks and things that we do and don't do. I would suggest that as a first step.
Okay, great.
And get in touch before long.
Sorry. Because we're the Department of Defense, we don't have the authorities to do a lot of the things that I think the community is looking for right now. And yesterday during Kyra's presentation, there was a question about the transfer of responsibilities to the Department of Commerce, which is being driven by Space Policy Directive 3 that I believe came out in about 2018. And a lot of the objectives in that directive are actually aimed at resolving, I would say, some of these gaps that the Department of Defense is not equipped, or I shouldn't even say equipped, they're just not authorized to do. So hopefully as we see some of the SPD3 objectives progressing, there will be more of these things available or resources available for new operators who want to do the right thing.
Great, and I really appreciate all three of your time today, and please give our thanks to the Colonel as well for his comments. If you have any closing comments before we go, but we need to close the session so we can get back to the next one as well. But if you have any closing comments, that would be great.
Just one, thanks for having us, and two, Cynthia and Kyra have put all of our information, I believe, in the chat. So please don't hesitate to contact any of us if you have more questions.
Okay, great. Thank you all very much. And thanks for all the attendees and the great questions. Sorry, we couldn't get to all of them. And so Ryan, am I handing it back to you?
Dr. Abercrombie, thank you very much. Thank you very much to Cynthia, Kyra, and Diana for your comments here as well in this great discussion. And we look forward to engaging with you all more in the future. Thank you very much, and we'll see you in the next session.